Rockwell, radio.
Brothers and sisters,
Radio. Rockwell, radio.
brothers and sisters,
Radio. Radio. Fuck. Rockwell, radio.
brothers and sisters,
Radio.
Yo, this is Problem 13 with Wolverine.
Radio.
I'm listening to DJ Rockwell. Holla!
I'm going to jump in on that note, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for answering that question, brother. And I believe I'm looking at the comments right now. They are hearing you and they are feeling you.
Praise be to Allah. Praise be to Allah.
Brother Enoch, I'm coming to you.
Yes, sir.
A few years ago, you were featured on the cover, as I mentioned, of the world's greatest and blackest and most powerful newspaper, The Final Call.
Yes, sir.
Your work has been embraced and received the cosign of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan himself.
Praise.
You have made presentations all over the country, in fact, one here in Atlanta, but people still find what you do hard to define. What is hip hop detox, brother? And what has been the results of those who have witnessed and experienced it?
You know, it's funny you said that you asked that question in terms of being able to define it, because, you know, when you define even the word mission in your question of helping, you know, the minister, you know, how do you define that word mission? You know, how do you define the role that you play in helping to produce a new nation? You know, to helping to produce the kingdom of God on earth. You know, for those who are unaware, we began doing work with youth in 2002, doing programs here in the city of Chicago. And by the time we got to about 2005, in the middle of 2005, there was several meetings that I participated in with the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan regarding the Millions More movement. And that's when D.A. Smart, our brother, him and I, we went on tour with the minister in 23 cities for the Millions More movement. And the minister said during that time that with all the work that we have to do within those 10 areas of what is called the Millions More movement ministries, find something that you can do utilizing your gifts, your skills, your talents, and your abilities, and go for it. Do it, because it's put out for all of us to join in our own liberation. And so in 2006, Hip Hop Detox was born. We were doing the work before that. However, after getting that wisdom, that information that came through that 3, 4, 5 month process of going city to city and listening to what the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan was saying to the world, that's when Hip Hop Detox was born in 2006. So when you consider that we define hip hop as being truth without boundaries, and the detox is the removal of poison, and at the root of all poison are lies, half-truths, myths, viruses. So the reality is that when we talk about hip hop detox, yes, we're talking about programs. Yes, we're talking about production and formats that we can use in a creative way. But at the core of the work of Hip Hop Detox, many people understand that if you want to get to the root causes of our issues as a people, then you got to be willing to hurl truth at falsehood until you completely knock out his brains. And of course, it always starts with self first, because the freer you are as a person, the more able you are to move and do your part of the mission. So when people talk about hip hop detox, yes, we are. You can go Google us and you'll see we're a public health organization. Yes, when we work within the different types of schools, people look at us as a social and emotional learning provider, restorative justice, or restorative practice provider. Yes, we deal with professionals, helping them to be culturally relevant to help young people. Yes, we deal with those who are either incarcerated or in transition from being, in juvenile detention or being in a Bing. And, they're trying to get their lives right. We do all of that. However, at the core of it, we're looking at process, how to go from one stage to the next, because the reality is that when you start talking about how do you help, you're talking about process. And lastly, when you talk about process, think about the steps, the word step even, services, training, equipment, program, and processes. What is it that we're able to do to be able to help move people? Because the reality is that all of us got an expiration date. All of us physically got one. However, this right here is infinite. And so if we can put those things out there that can be institutionalized long after we're gone physically, we'll be alive in our commitment and our devotion to helping that process of taking out these industrialized lies, these institutionalized falsehoods that have trillions of dollars behind them. We're part of that generation here that's geared to just dismantle it completely, but it starts here. We're talking about silent weapons for secret war that is now outright. And as Brother Miles was communicating about the outright stuff, we all see the teeth now. Some of us, it took us a while to see it. What happened with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and there's so many people after that that have either been hung or killed, or even those who say, well, black on black crime, yet we don't know who the hell it is that's squeezing some of these triggers, because guys I know on the block, they're like, look here, we ain't do the shooting. So we got to figure out, well, just because somebody black don't mean that that person isn't wearing a mask that's black, or that person don't got some receipts. They've been paid to do what they're doing. So
how about it?
All of these issues, but this is warfare that we're dealing with. And so hip hop detox at the core, we're part of that war for the mind. We're part of that war that goes right into the killing fields, but also goes right into the culture.
Love it, brother. And I've been a firsthand witness to it, and you have been and continue to do an excellent job.
Oh, praise be to Allah, bro.
We're up against the clock before we get into our second segment, but I got maybe one or two more questions to get out to the group. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has gone to great lengths to embrace the hip hop generation. And this has taken the form of giving counsel to rappers, squashing beefs between artists, and even making appearances with them on their records. Did y'all know that? He has won their trust. Has hip hop worked as a tool for you to win the trust of young people? So we're going to ask this in a round table style answer. So I'm going to ask, since we're up against the clock, and I got one more question for your answers to be as brief as possible. Let's start with Brother James, please.
Are you on mute, Brother James?
Yes, sir. I think so, to be honest with you, because being able to see a new generation of young people and they embrace what we are saying, it definitely affects the new generation of young people, because a lot of those people grew up with Public Enemy, and quite a few of them are on with you right now that grew up with Public Enemy. So there's a new generation of young people here to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I think is a key factor in this being pass it on to the next generation. Yeah, I think so.
Let's move on to our brother, hip hop historian, Brother Atone.
Yeah, definitely, Brother Vaughn. When it comes to young people, that's really what it's all about. Donald Mr. Louis Farrakhan, through his example, if you notice, whenever he talks about the youth and hip hop, he's always focusing in on our new generation of people, and he has a way of, getting on their level and vibrating with them and then taking them up on a higher level. And I actually want to quote the minister, because of course, if we want to help Minister Farrakhan, he's our best example. So I don't know of anyone that could help define our role in helping him than him. And just real quick, I'll just read this quote. He said that Allah God created nothing without an aim and a purpose, and blessed is the man or woman who discovers his or her reason for being. Each of you in this powerful and revolutionary hip hop community may have only wanted to make a good song and make a great impact, but maybe you are not aware that you have been chosen to lead. So
Wow.
I'll just leave right there. So our role, number one, is to accept our role as leaders. I see Brother Enoch has accepted his role, Brother Miles, Brother James, yourself, Brother Vaughn. I'm trying my best to accept my role. We have to accept our roles first as leaders, and then we got to go back to the younger generation and help create new leaders, because if they're in hip hop, they're leaders by default. But we got to help them develop that in them, and that way we can really help the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan.
Thank you, brother Miles. You're up.
Yes, sir. I would definitely want to echo what my brother said, and Brother A-Tone reminded me, and early in our hip hop for justice development, we were dealing with, and because of Brother A-Tone, a great part of it, we were dealing with a lot of legends, a lot of old heads. You know what I mean? We had a lot of old heads, but we didn't have hardly any of the youth, and we recognized that there exists a huge generation gap in hip hop, and all of us can attest to the reality of the sentiment that there's a lot of grumpy old men in hip hop, and a lot of these grumpy old men refer to these youngsters as a bunch of silly mumble rappers, right? And this is the language. This is the language. Some of them you see get on Instagram, or at least they would at one point, and take out a whole segment of time to yell at these mumble rappers. And what I'm saying is that cannot be a tactic that we use if we're sincerely trying to push the culture forward. I think that we have to do what the minister has instructed us to do, and that's close all gaps. So I absolutely think that hip hop, our work has helped us in our work. We have youngsters in their early 20s that are a part of hip hop and justice, and we got old heads that just made 60. So we're working to close that generation gap. But I think one of the key things is consistency. As long as we remain consistent, we will win over our people.
I don't know if brother's audio or signal is bad.
He just went on mute.
Yeah, he just went on mute.
Okay. Brother Miles, your system is a little slow. So in order to keep going and get through this first segment, we got one last question for this panel. And again, it'll be answered in a roundtable style format. Here's the question, gentlemen. In 2006, Nas released an album entitled Hip Hop is Dead. Recently, a certain culture vulture in the media lied on the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and intentionally mischaracterized his words to 4 million of his subscribers. A vulture, I looked up, is defined as a scavenging bird of prey. They are seen scavenging on the carcasses of dead animals. Is hip hop still dead 14 years later to allow for a culture vulture to do that? It must be, otherwise it couldn't happen, right? I'll start with Brother Enoch.
Yes, sir. Well, you kind of preface, the last part. You said, "Is hip hop still dead?" I love Brother Nas, and when he came out with that piece, of course I banged it. But let me just say this, you know, when you work with youth every day and you find yourself in the blessed position, I don't think there's no such thing as coincidence here.
Yes, sir.
I used to get upset a little bit, I'll be honest with you, when I would talk to a 15-year-old and they'd never heard of the Million Man March. I talked to a 30-year-old, they never heard of the Million Man March. And so it would irritate me because I'm wondering how in the hell could that happen? However, we have to be reminded, you know, we were never taught that no weapon would be formed against the righteous. We just was taught that the weapon would be formed, but it wouldn't be prosperous. It wouldn't prosper. But it doesn't mean that it won't be formed, it won't be utilized, and it won't cause damage. So I don't say that hip hop is dead. I think hip hop is alive and well. However, I think that when you're dealing in warfare, just like any type of war, you have to know that, well, we have to be on the offensive because we just can't keep playing defense. We could talk all day long.
Right.
All those who own the record labels and own distribution. However, we got to pick up that spirit on a greater level. And that's why I'm thankful that, you know, yourself and others have said, hey, let me put my voice out here to actually do the work that we were commissioned to do when we signed that pledge card. You know what I'm talking about? You know,
That's right.
When you signed that pledge card, you didn't only pledge to improve yourself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically for the benefit of yourself, your family, and your people, but you said that you're ready to go to war. You're going to engage in international trade and commerce, setting this up, establishing this. That's takeover. And that's what we have to do. We have to keep that in mind, that we have a enemy that went to work to the point where you have several generations. They call them the millennials and Generation Alpha, I think they call them, the Alpha generation. You have generations that have no idea of recent history. And so when it comes to, you know, hip hop, and when it comes to us as a people, we have to just recognize that, look, when I have to talk to my 17-year-old son about hip hop, I got to talk about what's going on with Polo G. You know what I mean? I got to study the lyrics of Polo G and check out, you know, Lil Durk, and check out G Herbo, and check out Lil Baby. And I'm working with them because that's where they are. But if I can connect G Herbo and Lil Durk and Lil Baby and all of them to what I was listening to, you know what I mean? Because we know what KRS was talking about in Criminal Minded. we ain't gonna forget what Spice One was talking about. I used to love Spice One. You know what I mean? So we have to always be willing to recognize that, look, the apple don't fall too far from the tree.
That part.
If we can keep that energy going, then we'll duplicate the works and even do greater works than our teacher has done, because the reality is that that's on us to do. So, you know, I don't know if I answered your question completely, because I kind of centered in on that hip hop is dead part. But the truth is never dead, as long as Brother James keep bombing, Brother Miles keep sending people's ass a mile and running. You know what I mean? With the truth, Brother keep on hitting that tone, and Rockwell keep on rocking. Look, we gonna keep on bombing them. We gonna keep on hitting them. And the young people, as they see us doing that and they hear from us and we're demonstrating, they're gonna be able to tune in and say, "Oh man, that's what Polo G was saying. That's where he got that from." Polo G got a song where he's using Changes, which is the track that Pac did. He's rapping on Changes, and he's actually putting out some nice lyrics and a nice message for the time, for this generation.
How about it?
So it's like we have to keep on connecting them dots, you know, so then we can keep on building on truth.
Matter of fact, the question was two-part. You just nailed the first part. I'm going to be more specific and fine-tune the question for our brother James Baum. Brother James Baum, the question dealt with a recent event of a culture vulture. I ain't even gonna repeat his name.
Oh, okay.
I ain't even call his name out.
So irrelevant.
But if hip hop was alive, well, and kicking, could that have even occurred? Or what is an appropriate response to that for a culture that is active, well, and functional?
Well, hold on. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, sir. I think, and I could name a couple of those culture vultures who've been sucking on our bones for quite some time, making huge amounts of money. And I think he said something to the effect, I got children and I got a wife, but this is after signing artists pertaining to drugs and who the whole drug culture and glorifying that whole situation. Brother said, what a vulture is. The vulture is an animal that eat dead things. I think in our time, and this is why the generation that and I consider my generation as a bridge to the younger generation of hip hop, because a lot of them don't know unless we tell them. And this is one of the things as a parent, I got adult children and I'm still a parent, even if they're an adults, because you're still sharing, you're still giving. Like my mother and father, before he passed, used to do the same thing with me. I just think right now in this present stage of hip hop, a KRS-One, a Chuck D, or right now you have Kendrick Lamar and a J. Cole, they would go right after them concerning what was being said. But you all tune in tomorrow and we're going to go after those culture vultures and deal with it specifically and how we should deal with it. And we want to call out some names, right? We're going to just leave the names alone for right now, but we will call them out tomorrow on Hip Hop for Justice.
Praise be to Allah. I can't ask for no more than that. Brother A-Tone, let's close the thing out. I'm 10 minutes. I'm 12 minutes over this segment. Segment 2, we're coming to you next. So if we can just try to be as succinct and to the point as possible. A-Tone.
Okay, so it's two things, very succinct. One, your question was, is hip hop still dead? To me, when I hear that question, it's like hearing the question, is Lazarus still dead?
Wow.
Lazarus was never dead. Just like Brother was sharing, Lazarus he was asleep. So all we need to do is move the tomb or the stone from the tomb, take Lazarus, take the napkin off his eyes, unbound his hands, and get him to work. And then he'll be back up and kicking where he's supposed to be, back in his original state. Now, the second part of the question, that's my phone going off there. But the second part about the Million Man March, I'm part of a group here in DC, the Ministry of Arts and Culture. And we produced a documentary. My wife happened to be the director. It's called The Million Man March, The Untold Story. And we asked the minister, we had the Million Man March, but it appears that we're in a worse condition after the march than we were before the march. And the minister's answer was this. He said, we are in a worse condition because we're at war, but we don't know that we're at war. Anytime somebody's trying to kill you and you don't know it, you can become an unwitting partner in your own self-destruction. So back again to what Enoch was saying, when it comes to the Million Man March, we have to be the ones to tell the story properly, help guide our young brothers, but then meet them where they are, and then show them the clean glass that, and be the living example that we want to be and help them to be. But we cannot go at them, in a way where we're, kind of destroying their spirit and becoming unattractive to them. We got to be attractive. And then the last piece I want to say is another word for one of the persons you're talking about is Dracula. Or the impaler, one who sucks the blood of someone else. So that's like someone who represents the 10%, who is a bloodsucker of the poor. So what we got to do is get that leech and detach it from the body, and then go ahead and then organize our people and unify, so they don't depend on that one that sucks our blood and then leaves us lifeless. So I would say that that's the move we have to make as those who represent leadership in hip hop.
Last round, gentlemen. Please, if you will, first of all, let me thank you all for being a guest on the debut of Rockwell Radio. I thank you on behalf of my family who've been putting up with me all week, talking about this and staying up late, trying to get these questions together and making noise around the house. Brothers, thank you. Please, starting with Brother Miles, tell the people where they can follow you, where they can find you, in 30 seconds or less.
Facebook, Miles Muhammad. Facebook at Hip Hop for Justice. Instagram at Hip Hop for Justice. Twitter at the official HH4J. And on YouTube, official Hip Hop for Justice. And the Echo Brother James will be live tomorrow, 1 p.m. West Coast, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And go ahead and tell them real quick what tomorrow's show is going to deal with.
Oh, man, we're dealing with what you just asked about, the culture vultures. West Coast Cam is going to be our guest. We got student minister Abdul Rashidullah Muhammad, Dr. Shango Blake. And we're just going to have a good time, brother, going after the enemy.
All right, I'm going to go counterclockwise to my brother, James Bond.
You know me,
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. You can reach me on Public Enemy Group by James Baum. That's Facebook, and you can reach me on James Baum. That's Facebook as well. S1W James Baum S1W at Instagram, and also same thing, James Baum on Twitter. You could reach me there as well.
And coming up to my 1 o'clock on the screen, my great brother Enoch.
Yes, sir. I can be reached Hip Hop Detox. That's Facebook, Twitter. You can get me fast at 773-563-4315. That's 773-563-4315. We're also, of course, on all social media platforms. Just HIPHOPDETOXX, and just hit us up.
And last but not least, at the top of the clock, my brother in DC, A-Tone the B-Boy.
Still on mute.
Okay, right. So best way to reach me on Twitter at Hip Hop Historian. On Facebook, we have a group called Classic Hip Hop Nation. So I would definitely direct folks, if they want to reach me on Facebook, go to Classic Hip Hop Nation or do a search for it on Facebook. And then we also have a radio station that we started with Easy AD of the legendary Cold Crush Brothers.
Yes, sir.
Which is called Classic Hip Hop Radio. And that can be found also on Facebook. Classic Hip Hop Radio.
Brothers, again, I thank you for rocking with DJ Rockwell. May God bless you. May God keep you. May He keep empowering you and removing any symptoms of fear for going after this beast. Grab it by its tail. Because at this point, in this hour, we can have no fear. And brothers, each of you have exhibited no fear. And I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. Brothers, again, I want to personally apologize. I had a nice planned out pre-printed bios to read of each of you, but in my nervousness, I forgot to print it. I'll bring it down. So, brothers,
this was beautiful, brother. Thank you, brother.
So I humbly invite you again for a part 2 in the near future that we can do this as we work out the bugs. So we all come back and be a guest again for a part 2 at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and brother Vaughn, is this recorded, or is there a way for folks to come back and check this out later?
Absolutely. It's streaming live on 3 channels. My personal Facebook page, my DJ Facebook page, and my page on YouTube. And it's going to be rebroadcast as well on YouTube.
Yes, sir.
So, brothers, thank you. And inshallah, I'll see y'all for part 2.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, brother.
Yes,
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Assalamu
alaikum.
Rockwell Radio.
Brothers and sisters,
Radio.
13 Wolverine.
Radio.
I'm listening to
Radio.
DJ Rockwell. Holla!